Hello, welcome to Press TV News Analysis. I'm Kavatavai. In this edition of the Press TV News Analysis, we will discuss why Britain's Office of Communications, known as OfCom, has decided to take Press TV off the air in the UK, despite the network's compliance with the law. OfCom has cited administrative problems as the reason, or does it have to deal with Press TV's highlighting of UK's human rights abuses or its critical coverage of the extravagant lifestyle of the British royal family?
OfCom has finally decided to remove Press TV from the Sky platform. OfCom has cited what it calls administrative problems in Press TV's application for a license back in 2007 as the reason for the ban. But media observers say the cited administrative problems are just a pretext to take the satellite channel off air. They say the channel is being removed over its coverage of recent developments in Britain. Press TV gave full coverage of protest against policies of the government of Prime Minister David Cameron. The protesters faced a harsh crackdown. The channel also covered the recent unrest in the country and the heavy-handed security response following the police killing of a young man in London. Press TV questioned the police use of taser guns to kill people and aired interviews shedding light on the torture to kill practice. It also analyzed the UK's latest royal wedding from a different perspective. Some analysts featured on the channel's programs criticized the wedding as widely excessive during the current tough economic times when average Britons can hardly make ends meet. Press TV has also criticized Britain's hereditary monarchy and its electoral system as undemocratic. The channel has aired critical views of British people and experts on the country's engagement in the US-led war in Afghanistan. Press TV also interviewed numerous people and analysts questioning the UK's decision to go to the war in Iraq. British media have accused Press TV of airing anti-government and anti-royalty opinions, encouraging Ofcom to ban Press TV. Many viewers have called this an attempt to extinguish the light of truth. Whistleblower website WikiLeaks had also reported earlier that Britain's Foreign Office and the US Embassy in London were mulling ways to limit Press TV's activities. This shows even the United States is concerned about the impact the alternative voice has had on a wide spectrum of people who formerly watched its so-called mainstream media. Now, many observers accuse Ofcom of caving in to the pressure. The media monitoring body never found any concrete evidence to ban Press TV, and instead carried out its mission by using what many call the lamest of excuses to silence the alternative voice. And this occurs in a country which claims to be a major advocate of free speech.
Well, let's look at the views of our guest on this. Author and journalist Phil Rees joins us from London. We also have author and political analyst Saib Shah, who joins us via Skype from Belfast. And from Stop the War Coalition, Lindsay German joins us on the phone from London. I'd like to welcome all our guests. First to you, Phil Rees. 4 years since Press TV filed for a license, and now Ofcom has decided to take it off the air. They have cited due to administrative issues. Doesn't that sound a bit odd? Not to mention in violation of the UK media law.
Well, Kava, I'm extremely surprised by this news. Obviously, it's not in the public domain now, but when Press TV told me this, I was extremely surprised that Ofcom would ultimately do this. I know there have been political pressure. We heard that, of course, and we knew that following the WikiLeaks disclosures. But it certainly surprises me that they would take what is a very dramatic step to do this. Indeed, to sort of bring up a lame excuse like administrative reasons, which, of course, in my view, doesn't wash at all. I think that there has been political pressure on Ofcom to act. I think this is a tragedy if the views of Press TV are being silenced because of political pressures.
Well, let's discuss that with Saib Shah, what you mentioned there, Phil Rees, in terms of the views that Press TV has presented. Saib Shah, what are the chances this has been due to this Press TV's critical coverage of UK, its politics, like the recent unrest, or in general, just violations of international law and human rights that have been committed by the UK government at home and abroad?
I confirm what you just said. Since PressTV played a major role in the Gaza criminal war on Gaza, the live coverage of that criminal war influenced the public opinion worldwide, and especially in the UK and the US, and showed what is really happening and helped in shaping the public opinion to support justice for the Palestinian. And if we follow from that, the British government went just recently and changed the British law, which allows for arresting international war criminals, and did that to protect the Zionist state and its war criminal acts and atrocities on Gaza. They protecting diplomats, politicians, and Zionist military commanders from the people who demand to bring them to justice in the UK. And we have seen after that, amending the law straight away, Steve Libney landed in the UK and received warmly by the British elite. Last month, there is another point here. Last month, there was a survey which carried out by Infob in France and YouGov in Britain, shows that in that poll, the figure in Britain, around 71% supported the Palestinian statehood bid in the United Nations, and they demanded the UK to act and recognize the Palestinian. Did the UK government respect the majority opinion, 71%? Of course not. This poll, to me, I said to the media at the time, exposed the undemocratic policies the government conduct, which ignore the majority opinion and serve Zionist and multinationals' interests. PressTV helped in exposing the British role, the government role, in arming the dictatorships in the Arab world, in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and Oman, to crush the Arab revolt and the Arab revolution in there, which is confirmed what WikiLeaks document were talking about. When the United, they telling the U.S. embassy in London that they're gonna do their best to limit the operations of PressTV. So we can see this operation is aimed from the United States of America and Israel as well to crack down on PressTV, especially at a time when we can see in the UK, after the riots, now there is a movement, a grass movement coming in London called Occupy London, which is trade unionist students all. They don't want to have the support and the facts which PressTV bring, like what is supported in Occupy Wall Street movement, seeing a lot of support and exposing to the truth and facts to the public. That's helped them in shaping their movement. They don't want to see that happening in London, and especially when it focuses all the attention at the failing and collapsing capitalist system in all of Europe.
Right.
And the PressTV helping much on that.
The problem is, Lindsey German, everything that Sabshath said in terms of the coverage that PressTV has given, I mean, it's not like 10, 15 years ago. I would guess, and I'm almost sure, that the number of viewers that PressTV has is probably just a small percentage of the number of readers that PressTV.ir has. Everything's online. Everything that PressTV presents in terms of what is going on is online on a number of websites. So the viewers ultimately are going to receive the news one way or another, especially these days. Viewers are tuned in. I mean, they're on the net and they're getting their news. So what is the British government afraid of? I mean, it's not like they can suppress the news if they've proceeded with the ruling that OfCom has decided to proceed with.
No, well, of course, they can't suppress the news, but this is what they're trying to do. I agree very much with Phil Rees that I find this an extraordinary decision by OfCom. It is clearly not about administrative problems. Any problems that there might be could be easily ironed out. It is about stopping an alternative view being put. And of course, on a whole range of issues, many people in Britain are dissatisfied with the mainstream media. And as you say, many of them go to the internet, go to different forms of social media in order to get their information. Therefore, you have a paradoxical situation today in Britain, and I guess in many countries, that you have a situation where people are not given this kind of information by the mainstream media, but nonetheless they're very well informed from their own researchers and so on. I would just say, however, I think there's another very serious aspect of this here, because it does seem to me that this coming at the same time as this alleged plot in Washington over the supposed assassination of the Saudi ambassador, and the accusation by the United States and by Saudi Arabia that the Iranian government are involved in this, seems to me this latest announcement coming at this time is very, very worrying, because you do feel that that this is part of a more general clampdown and maybe greater sanctions, maybe even worse things going on. So I think for all these reasons we should be very, very concerned about it.
Well, Phil Reese, let's go with what Lindsey German said there. If it's political in terms of an attitude that is now being exerted through this decision by OfCom, in terms of the British government and its views on the government of Iran, what does that have to do with the news in terms of it coming out from the Sky platform, which is where OfCom obviously has the jurisdiction to take Press TV off the air? One, in terms of the views of the British government on Iran, and then the second being the other side of the coin, which is just news that Press TV is reporting. These are from newswires that come, such as AFP, APTN, et cetera, et cetera. So don't see quite how this move is related to the other, if it is true.
Well, I don't think there's any such thing as pure news. I mean, people view the world in a different way. I mean, most of the broadcasters in Britain, for example, report on the Middle East and tacitly support US-Israeli hegemony over the region. Press TV takes a different perspective and believes that should be challenged. You mentioned the royalty in your earlier report. People do not criticize this medieval institution. It's hallowed in this country. So the voices of those people who challenge it are not heard. But organizations like Press TV put them on. As Lindsey German said, and as we heard from another contributor, there are many issues that are growing in importance in Britain that we do not hear, and that marginalized, and they seem to be somehow off the page of the mainstream news. Now, in my view, Press TV broadened the debate. It brought in a whole series of different views, and it looked at the news from a different perspective. Now, many people can get their news from a certain perspective by turning on any station they wish to. Press TV had a particular view. It had a particular view on the Palestinians. It did not treat the Palestinians who are occupied people on par with the occupiers who are Israel. Yet that is the premise to which OfCom believes that the British broadcasters should do. So it challenged a lot of these things. And in terms of the cacophony of sounds and news that we get on the in the world today, Press TV had a very unique and I think contributed to that debate. To silence them is a political action in itself.
But there are other news organizations, whether it's print or the media, Phil Reese, that report on the same things in the same manner that Press TV does. So either they're going to go and shut every one of these down if they can, or it shows how effective Press TV was. So is it the latter, that they felt Press TV was successful in some of the points that you made?
I think Press TV has garnered a large number of viewers, certainly on the Sky platform, from people who feel their voice was not being heard on the mainstream television. So when it came to their views of the Palestine conflict, when it came to their views of Britain's foreign policy and the justification for its foreign adventures in the Middle East, when it came to, for example, the civil discontent we saw over the rioting, which was presented in the mainstream media as something mindless done by lunatics who just wanted to thieve. This is in the midst of, by the way, the worst recession for possibly 80 years, when, of course, there are a huge number of social developments taking place. And, civil disobedience is something that the British government has a huge fear about. So they want to impose a series of economic measures without any civil disobedience. So to analyze things in certain ways are largely not done by the mainstream media. And that's because of the nature of the mainstream media in Britain, the elite that governs it, its value systems, and the kind of revolving door that exists between sort of government and various aspects of various defense security establishments and others. So there's a kind of consensus that's created. And Press TV was a voice that challenged that consensus.
Well, Sabshad, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's take a look at the senior decision makers at OfCom. They're mostly made up of former Channel 4 and BBC executives, some of whom are well linked. This is public information to and influenced by powerful pro-Israeli politicians and U.S. sympathizers. Do you think there's a relation there?
Of course. The position at OfCom is given to them,
Channel 4 and BBC executives, as reward. And that is influenced by the Zionist lobby in the UK. And they are connected with the Zionist lobby in the USA. And exactly as your previous speaker said, it's connected to the conspiracy of killing the Saudi ambassador in New York, or Washington, as they say. It's all linked together. And they consider Press TV as the soft power which the revolutionary Republic of Iran have, and they want to demonize Iran now, and they want to demonize the international new perspective of understanding what the new liberals are doing and their aims and goals at the Middle East, and especially using the counter-revolutionary forces in Saudi Arabia.
Lindsay German, tell us, how is this going to backfire, the decision that has been made, in terms of how the general public in the UK are going to view this? I mean, I'm almost certain that many of the viewers, well, they can access Press TV online, but at the same time, this suppression that it appears goes against one of the general consensus of a democracy, and that's the freedom of speech. So how will this backfire in terms of the perception by people in the UK?
Well, I think for the people who know about it, people will be very, very angry about it indeed. And I think, as you say, that any basic democratic right must include the right of different points of view to be heard. This is what a democracy is about, and therefore any genuine democracy would be able to have all these different views. The real problem, I think, is that we have a media which as Phil Rees has said, has a consensus which is a very, very narrow consensus. You have all the three main parties are the parties which are mostly represented, if at all, on the media, on the broadcast media. You don't hear from smaller parties. You don't hear from people who have a different point of view most of the time, even though we know that, for example, on the question of the Afghan war, more than 70% of people in Britain oppose the war. You wouldn't think so from looking at the television or from reading most of the newspapers. The same is true about the economic crisis. Again, this is regarded as an extreme view by the BBC and other people. So, be annoyed about it. But many people don't really realise what is going on. They don't realise the way in which Ofcom is behaving, not for the first time, in a political way. And it's something which is very, very much to be regretted, and I think should very much be opposed by all of us who are in a position to say or do anything about this.
Phil Rees, do you think that this could be a trend now that we might see in terms of some of the other news channels that might be critical of the UK government in whatever variety or form, in terms of any developments in the UK, whether it's the unrest or whatever else that's critical of the government? Could this be the beginning of a trend if they have gone to this extreme of Ofcom deciding to take Press TV off the Sky platform?
Well, I think that, governments in the West, in fact, throughout the world, are worried by the new media tapestry, which, in a sense, it's thinning government's ability to influence the information that people get. So I think there's a huge change taking place, obviously, in the delivery of information to people around the world, and that has significant political implications. And I think that governments are trying to manage information as they've always tried to do, and part of that is to co-opt certain networks, part of that is to just use their usual PR tactics, and obviously it might seem, if your story is true, and I think it's a very dramatic story, that they feel that certain viewpoints should not be part of the mainstream and should not be something that people can get on a major platform delivering information in Britain. Of course, they can't control the internet. But it's in my view extremely worrying, and I think there will be repercussions to this. And I would even think that this decision could be challenged in court. I think lawyers would have to get involved. But this is a dramatic move by Ofcom, and I think it's a signal of very dark days if it turns out to be the case.
And Lindsay German, we could take a look also at some of the, if it's a handbook that Ofcom has of the rules that they follow. And again, public knowledge that Ofcom is not allowed to check the BBC content, but only its technical aspects. So then the question comes about, in this case in point of Press TV, is it not then a double standard?
Well, I think this is what lots of people will think it is, because there are many people that I know personally, and many other people I know that there are huge numbers of people who complain to the BBC over a number of issues. For example, the question of Palestine and the reporting of Palestine, the whole question of the Gaza protest, when actually an academic study showed that they were very, very distorted by the BBC, which kind of made out that the Palestinians were the original aggressors. So people complain about this, and really the BBC is totally self-regulated, and yet you have something like Ofcom, which really is used against a whole number of more minor questions and a whole number of supposedly technical questions. And I think it does raise a lot of issues about the media in this country. But it does seem to me quite amazing that when the big channels, the BBC, the commercial channels, the four big channels, have millions of people watching them, they have huge viewerships, and it does seem to me an incredible thing that the British government is intervening against a station which cannot compete in that kind of way, doesn't have the access to mainstream media that the BBC has. And it shows they obviously are very worried about dissent. And of course, the problem they have in Britain is there is growing dissent. There is a likelihood of very, very big strikes here this autumn over the attacks on public sector pensions and other conditions of workers. So there'll probably be 3 million people out on strike in November. There are lots of demonstrations going on. These are worrying to the government, which is using increasing police repression to deal with them, but also this kind of method to try to contain anyone who says anything different.
Phil Rees, in 30 seconds or less, Prime Minister David Cameron, when the unrest broke out, said we're going to limit the online social networks in terms of the communication people are going to have. Do you think that this is part of that psychology and way of thinking of perhaps the British government?
They're trying to work out how they can manage the flow of information, and I think that is something that is very serious. I think they try to do it before wars, before any kind of major public decisions. And as Lindsay German absolutely said, there are going to be a lot of civil disobedience in the coming months, and they certainly don't want voices that may be encouraging or legitimizing that civil disobedience to be seen by the very people who might cause it.
Thank you very much. Author and journalist Phil Rees there from London. We appreciate that. Author and political analyst Sab Shath earlier from Belfast with his statements. And from Stop the War Coalition, Lindsay German, we appreciate that on the phone from London. Thank you for watching. Send us any questions you may have on this. Newsroom at PressTV.ir. Even though we're still on the Sky Network, we're still going to be available on other satellites. Do check out PressTV.ir for that. From me, Kavatapwe, and the entire team, it's goodbye.